The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. We are talking about how the African will be free, and we can never gain our independence through speech. We heard that our all in all, the savior, the protector, the unifier, the messiah, the king of kings, the most loved, Captain Ibrahim Traore, has declared a progressive popular revolution in Burkina Faso. And today our brother and uncle Basil Mabazie is there to give us a detailed explanation step by step. He talked about how the African needs to regain his or her culture. That one is very important, because as Africans, if we don't know our identity, how do we then build? He went ahead to talk about our natural resources, how we need to reclaim, gain our power, and he talks about the African unification. And that is the reason to which all in all, Captain Ibrahim Traore decided to open up the borders and made Burkina Faso visa free to all of us that are in Africa and in the diaspora. Whosoever that wants to come, you are welcome, because they can never say they are looking for a revolution when they are not having support from other people. And as long as Africans, we are one people, we need to always make sure our culture is what drives everything.
Entering a new era of great ideological upheaval. Beyond the difficult struggle to completely reclaim its territory, the country has embarked on a path of profound transformation called the Progressive People's Revolution. But what exactly are we talking about? A return to the roots of the 1980s, or a total reinvention of the Burkinabe social contract between asserted sovereignty, administrative reform, and the construction of a new regional space with the Confederation of Sahel States. The stakes are colossal. To discuss this, we are welcoming a man who is at the heart of this ideological and institutional reactor, a former union leader known for his rectitude. Today, he holds strategic positions at the top of the state. Mr. Bassol Mavassier, good evening. Good evening. You are Minister of State, President of the National Commission of the Confederation of Sahel States. With you, we will dissect the content of this revolution, the reality of Sahelian integration, and answer the questions of the people of Burkina Faso about the future of this governance model. Thank you for accepting our invitation. You are welcome. Yes. And to start, Mr. Minister of State, why was it necessary to start a new revolution in Burkina Faso at this time? Thank you very much. Before we begin, allow me to express my sincere thanks to God and our ancestors, who enable us to have good health on a daily basis, but also the clarity of mind to meet our demands. The second level is to express our gratitude to all the authorities of our brother country, Togo, starting with His Excellency, the President of the Council. And the third level is you, Mr. Gillis. You sincerely congratulate him on the Pan-African work that you do, the professionalism with which you host the programs, but also congratulate Brother Sogo for everything he does on this TV, because we follow him throughout the world, and I think that is assumed. That is exactly what it means to be an educator of the masses. And at the same time, take advantage of congratulating him, because he was appointed to the team of the Farafina Institute of Black Peoples in Burkina Faso. Absolutely. So from this point of view, the concern that you raise and the head of state clearly stated on April 1, 2025, that our country is engaged in a progressive popular revolution. And to say that even before this proclamation, Anali Haka, you know very well that it is not only the words that fly there that truly carry the framework of an issue. It is above all the fundamentals. Even if we do not officially say that we are in a revolution, the practices within the fundamentals do so if it leads to it, namely to go into the conduct, to fundamentally change the ways of doing things at the political, economic, security, and cultural levels, whether we say it or not. And I think the impact and the way of acting totally indicate that we are in a revolutionary period. He officially proclaimed, and I think that since taking power, the directions he had to give, and it has been publicly said that it fits exactly with the directions that had been taken and implemented from 83 to 87 by the late Comrade Captain Thomas Sankara. So from this point of view, it must also be said that overall, if you come to a country where when was so, it is practically without a head, and you have to put things in order. You want to move forward. You have to master your history. If you master your history, Shasin, you determine the underlying causes that prevent you from making progress, that prevent you from being stable. It is difficult to change them by caressing. And if you do not want to change them by caressing, Nisi, you do not want to dramatize. Tum, you have to get to the bottom of it. Nisi, 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 Nooch, Nisi, Nisi, Nisi. And to get to the bottom of it, Nisi, 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 Nooch, you can only get to the bottom of change through a revolution. Precisely. It is not enough to say that we are in a revolution, because a revolution is a profound change, a fundamental change, an upheaval. But what type of upheaval? Because when we say a radical change, it can be good or bad. When we say a radical change, i.e., it can be bad or mediocre. Here, up, he says that it is a revolution first, up, so it is a radical change. This revolution must be progressive. That means we must progress from the minimum to the best, step by step. And it must be popular, because any revolution, any good power, must first be supported by the communities, by the populations, by the masses, hence a popular revolution. And how do you ensure that there has been support for this revolutionary project from all of Burkina? You know very well that since we said that we are moving towards sovereignty in the management of our country, it means that we are leaving the envelope of an outstretched hand. And if you do not want to extend a hand and you truly want to take responsibility, it requires the popular support that you have, Lamia, which indicates that the population is supporting the momentum that is underway. The first element that I give to indicate that the population is supporting the momentum that is underway, if you take a look, we have launched the Patriotic Support Fund to be able to tackle a certain number of projects at the national level. This Patriotic Support Fund, since it was launched in 2023, at the time I am speaking to you, in 2025, we have reached a popular contribution of 551.2 billion. No such thing has happened since 1960. So from this point of view, I do not think that in a difficult social or economic period, in a period of war where workers and populations are suffering, they will be able to listen to a head of state and put their hands in their pockets, which will go to 551.2 billion. That is the first proof that the support is palpable. The second element that shows that the support is palpable is that we see that in all countries, in all regions, in all villages, today, when the head of state gives a direction, it is followed. And it is even the populations who are starting to tell certain decentralized leaders, if you want to take action, we say, we are no longer in the old days. That means that people's minds have started to catch on. I could have given other examples, but be careful. I'm not saying that everything is better, because the people at the base can only take a clean line if we, the leaders, that is to say, the team at the top, shows a clean conscience in terms of exemplarity, in terms of virtuous governance, in terms of truth, in terms of truth, in terms of patriotism. Because in all the powers where things have started to go wrong, they say the fish naturally rots from the head down. So if the head is exemplary, koalecha, there's no reason why the people who support them shouldn't follow. So the African people, particularly Burkina and in Area A, are people who fight. Eddie are people who are very ready. Eddie, who are also critical, and not even to say that the African is fundamentally revolutionary. But now, if he is fundamentally revolutionary, who speaks on his own behalf, who defends his cause because he wants to see reality beyond the words. Because if we just theorize, we become theorists. If we only go into practice, we become activists. What we want to do is connect this theory to real-world application, thereby enabling us to be politically aware people. We also need to be technically competent in order to be socially useful. Well, I can give you an example. I spent a few days in Gadou. I saw the enthusiasm for participation around the FOB project. Recent Follies, there is the Faso'S project that was also launched at the regional level, where people in each region contribute. You can see that almost the entire country is in the middle of construction. And you will also see that through the same project facing the MBO, in less than a month, we were able to set up the layout of the highway that goes from Ouagadougou to Bobo, which is a 4-lane highway with 2 lanes, and it is on its own land, and the work has already started. That means that if we continue like this, if the populations do not adhere, these are elements that we will not be able to achieve, at least not. Thank you, Minister of State. We will now discuss the challenges of the AES Confederation in relation to the Burkinabe Revolution. Can this revolution succeed in isolation, or is it inseparable from the dynamics of the Confederation of Sahel States? No. It is quite clear that even if the Confederation of Sahel States did not exist, fortunately it is there, and a revolution in a country cannot succeed in isolation. Because if you define revolution as a fundamental change that must be driven by the masses, a people cannot isolate themselves and then be able to evolve. It is not possible. The world is not separate. So from this point of view, regardless of your understanding, rascal, your internal solidarity dynamism, if you do not have the support of other peoples, it will be very complicated because you have to communicate with the world. A second aspect, don't assume you're fully sufficient, implying you have nothing to learn from others. Furthermore, the AES space is not a space that indicates that we are in a phase of isolation or withdrawal. It is not a space of smugness. It is not a space of arrogance, and even less of insolence. So this is to say that it is a space for the conquest of sovereignty on the political, economic, security, and cultural levels, but precisely this sovereignty that must be supported by all populations. If you do not explain to them that their unity at the base in all respects is an essential element, is a fundamental pillar for our development, we will not succeed. Better, you have seen that the head of state, Comrade Captain Ibrahim Traoré, had a decision taken in the Council of Ministers, stating that any African, wherever you are, wants to come to Burkina Faso. In principle, visas are free. If visas are free, it is to allow Africans to come to their countries. So this is tangible proof that we are not in a phase of isolation, saying that we cannot unite alone if we do not gather forces to move forward. But within the AES, if there is a revolutionary regime in Burkina Faso, then in other countries, I am not at the same pace. Yes. As I said from the beginning, on April 1, 2025, Comrade Captain Ibrahim Traoré, head of state, officially proclaimed that Burkina Faso is in the midst of a progressive popular revolution. You have seen that when His Excellency General Abdourahmane Tiani visited Mali, in one of his speeches, he clearly said that Niger is in the midst of a revolution. Even though Mali does not officially say so, I said in my introduction that it is not necessarily by proclaiming independence that we are in a revolution. It is the practices and actions that are taken. Take Mali, even if it has not been officially proclaimed, all the weapons purchases, reorganization of their armies, and investment at the national level represent a fundamental change from every point of view in all sectors. Take the case of Niger as well. It is a fundamental change, because the Burkinabe head of state only made the proclamation on April 1, 2025, but well before 2025. From September 30, 2022 to 2025, everything that has been done is exactly in line with a commitment to move towards fundamental change in all sectors. So, it is not necessarily the proclamation that allows us to say that we are truly in a revolutionary period, but rather the set of actions and their fruits on the ground for the benefit of the masses. And as President of the National Commission of the Sahel States, what are the urgent issues that you are addressing for the integration of the peoples of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso? Yes, it must be said that as President of the National Commission of the Confederation of Sahel States in Burkina Faso, the commission was created on November 6, 2024, by Decree 1329 signed by the head of state. But it is based on the guidelines impacted by the treaty establishing the Confederation of Sahel States, which was signed on July 6, 2024 in Niamey. It was there that the heads of state said, given that we are in a confederation, we must focus on three essential pillars. First, Netshow, the development pillar, Netshow, the diplomacy pillar, and the defense and security pillar. It was at this level that they considered it necessary for each country to set up a national commission upon its return. Hence the issuing of Decree 1329 establishing the commission at our level. And on December 9, 2024, the head of state issued the second decree appointing the president, who is myself, namely Decree 1558. And he also issued the third decree on December 23, 2024, appointing the three vice presidents to head each pillar: Vice President for Defense and Security, Vice President for Diplomacy, Vice President for Development, and he issued Decree 1642. So he continues to expand the commission in terms of human resources. But this is to say that the missions of this commission are structured around H. I will mention a few. The first mission is to monitor and follow up on the implementation of the decisions and guidelines taken by the heads of state. The second mission is to have a significant, validated, and implemented activity program. And the third mission, one of the most important, is to contribute to the preparation of the various meetings in the AES space, whether presidential, ministerial, parliamentary, or even at the level of senior civil servants. And the fourth mission is to go to the communities to explain all the decisions taken by the heads of state, where we come from, where we are, and where we are, and where we are going. You cannot ask the communities to come and support you without them knowing exactly the weight you carry, and so on. So all of these missions are structured, as I said earlier, to allow the head of state to enable the AES space to acquire economic sovereignty, political sovereignty, security sovereignty, and cultural sovereignty. Regarding political sovereignty, as I said earlier, you know very well. From the years of independence until today, formal independence, we have given the impression that we are independent while at the same time choosing those who should direct our destiny across the ocean. We must bring together all the necessary conditions so that the choice of our leaders is not made by strangers or people who do not even want us to evolve. The second fundamental mission, which concerns the issue of security. Knuckle, you have seen that in fallacious and very dangerous agreements. Halle, it was said that our soldiers had to be trained by France and even all the equipment purchased there. So, in wanting to move towards security sovereignty, it is about having independence in the choice of our partners, buying from whomever we want, how we want and when we want, without being dictated by anyone. The recruitment and training of our defense and security forces is our responsibility, not someone who can put us in the pillory at any time. The other essential pillar or essential mission is the cultural issue, which must be at the center, because someone who does not know where they come from, does not know where they are, cannot know where they are, cannot know where they started from. So it is in our interest to fight, to reclaim our identity. Who were our grandparents? What did they do? Where are we? And where do we want to go? We must fully assume this. And the last fundamental resignation is the economic issue. We always say that Africa is poor, Africa is full of disease. But I cannot understand. You say that a dish is empty, that it contains nothing. But we tell these imperialists, leave the dish, but you are clinging to it, you are pulling. It means that the dish contains something, and we know very well from geological surveys that Africa is incredibly rich. And if you type on your cell phones, you will see that even the UN has decided on what has been called a $1 billion map. This means reprospecting Africa on a new scale to allow exploitation. But exploitation for whom? So this latest mission is to ensure that the subsoil and forest and highland resources belong to Africans. They must be transformed for their well-being, because we are not proud to see young people dying in the middle of the ocean every time, bodies that are brought back to us by the waters, or die on desert roads. We are rich, and we want this wealth to benefit Africans first before moving on to anything else. Yes, but many are impatient. Especially when it comes to economic issues. When will street money be available? But precisely, we understand the impatience of some, but they should understand that when you live in a mud of almost 62 years, 1960 to today, or even more, since the CFA franc was created in 1945 by a decree signed by General de Gaulle, who himself refused to let the United States mint money for them. So it is on this currency that we live, which is the CFA franc. And I agree that Africans are impatient, because if you want to talk about sovereignty from every point of view, and you do not have monetary sovereignty, it is a bit complicated. But I said that to be able to go far, we must know where we come from. And when we look back at where we come from, there was the independence of Guinea, for example, in 1958 with the late Sékou Touré. So I salute his memory. But you saw that when Deg told Tour, if you want your independence, take it. They immediately proceeded to systematically ransack the entire administration. But when Guinea was able to put everything into them to produce its currency, Guinea was flooded with counterfeit bills. The same is true of Malian currency. Up until a certain point, Mali had left the CFA franc and was minting money. It was also the same process. So there are imperialist voices shouting at us, urging us to say, You're talking about currency. Where are you? What's their problem? First of all, it's a currency for the Confederate area. Edu is not a French currency. So at their level, I ask them why they're in a hurry. When I dig a little deeper, I see that they're in a hurry because they're very uncomfortable since all international purchases had to go through them. If you want to pay in yen, ra. If you want to pay in dollars, ra. As soon as the CFA franc is used and it's time for them to manufacture and they have the benefits from it, ra, they haven't fallen back. Secondly, they can't control the equipment that we managed to bring to us. He wondered, how are we going to pay? Even if it's sand that we pee, it's us who decided with our partners to pay. It's not their problem. Now, regarding our African brothers and sisters, I understand them perfectly. But it's to say that someone who wants to go far manages their machine properly. Because the question of the Confederation, I said that in terms of the missions of the Commissions, is to conduct prospective studies, to see how we can evolve from confederation to federation. So this is not a fight that should be limited to our generation. Hachira, it is a fight for infinity. So let's lay fundamental foundations that can be very strong so that the house can stand. Because if we rush in all directions, we can build a behemoth that is very visible from afar. But in the slightest storm, the pillars will not hold. So the question of the AES currency, General Tiani, His Excellency, has clearly stated that they are working on it. When the time comes, technicians will be authorized to go out and communicate on it. The most important thing is that Africans, especially the populations in the AES area, do not lack drinking water, do not lack food, do not lack health care, and so on. You have seen even in this context, without the currency being issued since 1960, it was last year in July that there was the first kidney transplant in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. So that means we are not waiting for the currency to impact development on the ground, while fully agreeing that we cannot talk about economic sovereignty without having our currency. All Africans can rest assured that the heads of state are in their laboratories and when they will come out in due time. But precisely on the issue of development, you have very interesting indicators. I read one of your reports last week, which showed that in 2 years, Burkina Faso's trade balance has now been in surplus. How were you able to do that the first time it has happened in Africa? In Africa, especially south of the Sahara, Kosa, how did you do it? What magic? What magic do you use? What magic do we use? We want to begin by giving heartfelt thanks again to God and our ancestors. And I said earlier that the economic direction has been taken, which is to ensure that we produce what we consume and consume what we produce. Looking back, you saw in 2024, the head of state made sure that everyone went before him to check the budgets of your institution line by line and delete all the elements that did not allow us to be autonomous and rely on ourselves. The only element that I can mention here, for example, you saw that we even saw connections with certain newspapers that were paid to praise or praise certain leaders. So when you delete financial lines like that, it is refocused internally. The second element, when you have an imperialist power that puts you under wraps, that squeezes you in every way, and you make the commitment, the necessary sacrifice to redirect partners, you manage to have not only very good priced equipment, that is one, and quality equipment, that is the second aspect. This means that things that were overpriced from every point of view, whose quality could even remain questionable. Today, they are much cheaper. That's one. And secondly, it's quality, because we also start at the source. And even when we order gliab, the false deadlines that were applied to us before are no longer the order of the day. The third element. You should know that our populations, who should be congratulated, the workers who should be congratulated, are truly revolutionaries. Everyone is working hard. Despite the difficulties, you saw the head of state recently made a decision saying that all the arrears that have accumulated at the level of health workers who did not take action, understanding the period, he said to liquidate everything. So overall, the quality of the choice of our partners, the way we manage our internal budget, the way we go to the source to pay so as not to circumvent, it is quite clear that the balance cannot be in surplus at our level.
The S-States alliance is often seen as a challenge to the ECOWAS bloc. How do you manage this geopolitical shift, and to what extent does Togo's new strategy for the ES? You have just attended a conference on this subject. How will this new strategy further contribute to achieving the objectives of your alliance?
Yes, the new strategy for iOS, to which we were invited, and we took part in this major historic meeting, and we would like to once again reiterate our congratulations, not only to His Excellency the President of the Council, but also to his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mamabama Bahadalishali, His Excellency Robert. I referred to him yesterday as Article 30 of the Kuruwanfuan Charter of 1236, which states that at some point the family must talk to each other. They had the courage to bring together all the stakeholders, and even the partners, even if for some, this partnership must be put on hold. Yesterday's day was a historic day, inasmuch as some truths were voiced, and I am delighted that today, when you consider whether it is the ECOWAS or the African Union, if I listen to the speeches that were made yesterday and their interventions, it is no longer the same afterthought on which we relied to look down on, to intimidate, that is to say the langa, the violent speech of VOD at war, all that. And everyone recognizes that all the acts that were committed against Niger should not have happened as an African. The president of the ECOWAS Commission even said that African social structuring is an ancestral doctrine. If it is an ancestral doctrine, Haas, I responded to that by saying that whoever speaks in the name of the ancestors and goes elsewhere to do something else, the ancestors will visit you, and they are not amused. So if you believe that you should speak in front of us by adding the names of your ancestors, well, these ancestors must be vigilant. In any case, these same ancestors were involved in the purchase of Kuruwanfuan 2236. If you look at Article 23, it says there that you must not betray yourselves. So that means, if we had all remained fundamentally African, CDAO should not oppose an African entity by saying that we should go and bomb it, because the founding fathers of CDAO in 1975 were practically military men, such as Musa Traore, Sango Lamizana, Sunti, and Adem. That's right, so they were military men. But the vision was for African integration at the economic level and to allow populations to rub shoulders. But if we come because Mali has come out and taken power, Burkina Faso has taken power, Niger has taken power, and we start to sanction them worse by trampling even the texts of the same ECOWAS, because the sanctions, as soon as the ECOWAS considers that you are not on the right track, the sanctions are to tell you that you will no longer take part in the meeting. It is to tell you that we cannot hold a meeting at your place. It is to tell you that if you have choices, candidacies at the international level, we cannot support you. But nowhere is it written in any ECOWAS text that borders must be closed. Even the internal regulations of the central bank in its Article 4 clearly state that the bank does not want to be under political injunction to block the assets of countries. You saw Mali has just been right about it, and me. So what is that to say? But when you close the borders, do you cause all that to die? These are the same populations that you claim to defend. So from this point of view, the opposite of an organization. The AS was not created to counter an organization. The AS was not created to fight against an organization. The AS was created to conquer the economic, political, cultural, and security sovereignty of its territory. Now, if an organization, a country through its leaders believes that it must trample on the interests of the AS, it is completely in agreement and clearly conscious that we are in a position of self-defense. That is quite clear. And here too, we mobilize the populations so that in the event of a situation, we can assume our responsibilities. What we did to the representative of France for the Sahel yesterday is that we do not negotiate our sovereignty. We are not making aumône. We are not making quime. We are fighting for our sovereignty, and any person who organizes, any malicious force that organizes to come and attack us, we are authorized to sell ourselves. And finally, you have seen on the issue of the relations between ECOWAS and SOA. At the time, KIK continued to say that they wanted negotiations with Burkina Faso. They wanted separate negotiations with Mali. But in May 2024, they decided to go to Mali, to Bamako, to a meeting between ECOWAS and SOA. These were no longer isolated countries. And today, with the speech that we attended yesterday, with even the statement of the representative of the Sahel of the African Union and Mali, he clearly said that the fight today is not to bring the Sahel back to the level the level of ECOWAS. It is to see as Africans how we can all act in the interest of the populations. And even when we say it like that, it is at a certain level of governance of countries that some have forgotten their history, controlled by people who are sitting side by side on the other side of the oceans and do not know what they are doing. It's sad for an African who doesn't know their origins. Otherwise, Africans are integrated. When we take borders, for example, in a way that is drawn in a virtual way, where we even separate families who are on either side of a border, the populations do not have any integration problems. I said that it is our political behavior at high levels of state management, which is very unfortunate, that leads to confrontations and misunderstandings among the populations. Because why? At the level of our sister country Togo, despite the fact that the ECOWAS, the African Union, and through the agglomerated imperialists at the level of the European Union were ready to strike our territory, and they intimidated any country that dared to do so. So when we congratulate the Togolese people, Mastoshi, we congratulate their highest official Sao, the president of the council. It is not just empty words. We must have the courage to say, I will not close my border with my brothers. We must have the courage to say that their ordered equipment must not be blocked. We must have the courage to convene and plant a tree of peace, as was done yesterday during the high-level meeting for the Sahel. We must have the courage to do so. So we sincerely want to congratulate them and ask that God and our ancestors accompany us, and that I did not say that there are no difficulties in every country. There are difficulties. We cannot be perfect. We are not gods. So where there are difficulties, Kuri, let there be genuine understanding, and let people understand that we will not have another Africa, Kuri, we will not have another country. If you are the key to open the door to Africa as a traitor to come and pound your brothers, but I think that history will remember that you did not play the right role, and even better, those who used you to open this door, they will not let you. Mr. Minister of State, on the end we are going to address the last aspect of this interview, which is to talk about terrorism in connection with the human rights accusations that have been regularly made against the countries of Burkina Faso. The N are the Road to Watch reports. But first, how can we reconcile the urgency of the fight against terrorism with the imperative of social justice and individual freedom specific to a progressive revolution? Yes, I think that what we need to say about human rights is what I call a morgue. It is a morgue that creates deaths in order to put them in the loo. Why do I say this? Because you know that Libya was attacked in 2011 with the assassination of its leader. If you search the internet and list all the reports from the United Nations at the Security Council level, it is clearly stated today that these reports were not serious. Why? Because the decisions taken in UN Resolution 1970 and Resolution 1973 to attack Libya, and the objective that was sought was a no-fly zone to prevent Gaddafi's aircraft from bombing civilians, according to them. It did not provide for a ground intervention, let alone the assassination of Libya. So that means that these two conventions were used in a clever way, and, in the eyes of history, the actors must answer for it. That is the first element. The second element that contributed to the adoption of these two resolutions were reports from human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch. And precisely, Roche said that in Benghazi, the authorities were shooting at point-blank range, and they killed hundreds of civilians, and that they even surrounded some cities with internationally banned anti-personnel mines. It's now proven false, without a doubt. I'm not the one saying it. If you go online, whoa, you can type it. In 2016, a report was produced by the British Parliament because their country took part. Great Britain took part in the attacks, and this British Parliament pilloried Tony Blair and also Sarkozy because the reports continue. It is clearly stated that fallacious hypotheses were used. But these fallacious hypotheses were based on the report of the same organization, Human Rights Watch. But so that means that today, the assassination of Gaddafi or Sarkozy in 2025 was condemned by his justice system for criminal conspiracy. If we are serious, Ikrin, the leaders of Human Rights Watch, should not have escaped Ikrin, since it was their reports that led to the adoption of the 2 resolutions to attack Libya. Worse, I think that the newspaper Le Monde, if you look at their newspapers, they published a publication. I think that if my memory serves me correctly, the date must be December 6. They published a report on December 6, 2011, which they also published, saying inside that what they called the, quote, I was going to say to indicate in any case that the reports on the basis of which the intervention in Libya is based are not solid and true reports, and in this same document, they justify that the intervention of the jihadists, the impact of the jihadists in the Sahel, in the AES, is linked to the fact that Libya was ransacked. What does that mean? That Human Rights Watch, which is accusing Burkina Faso of yet another level, can be held accountable for its historical responsibilities before the courts, saying that it was their report that led to the devastation of the SA countries. On the third level, I think that even the African Union should have filed a complaint because Gaddafi was taking charge of nearly 45% of their budget. But since Gaddafi died, look at how the organization itself has been struggling. So it is to say that they too, who were against this intervention in Libya, should have taken action and invited or summoned Human Rights Watch, how should I put it, before the courts so that it can respond. So from this point of view, when we take all these elements together, it indicates that Human Rights Watch is preparing the same scenario. To the extent that, for example, the newspaper Le Monde itself, which disputes the quality of the reports of this intervention, clearly states that Human Rights Watch is not there to defend human rights. And it is not me who says it. If you are still on the same net, I think it was September 10, 2013. September 10, 2013, Jeune Afrique had to say that Human Rights Watch is a weapon of war. But a weapon of war is not to defend human rights. And then, it is said in the same article that Human Rights Watch weighs heavily on the decisions of the UN. So when it is said like that, it does not make a pair on the debates, but on the decisions. It means there is a possibility that a decision of the UN could be used to thwart, or in any case, go in a very bad direction. Now, returning to the case of Burkina Faso, to show the similarity with Libya. First, they say that they compiled their report based on phone calls. How can someone be serious, claim to be serious, by making calls without going to the field to check what is happening? That is the first element. They also added satellite images. Exactly. But how can satellite images, I was going to come back to this, how can satellite images see people who are committing massacres, and the same satellite images not see jihadists who are organizing to attack them? It is not contradictory. So there is a problem. They started their report in 2023. 2023 to 2025, how many years ago? And you come in a few months for a report that you say you have been building for years. You come in a few months before the end of the closure to tell the people, the leaders, the Burkinabe officials, to respond. That means we create the conditions so that they don't respond, so that they can find a way out and say, yeah, even they didn't respond, so what they said is true. When I questioned the French representative in the Sahel who was there yesterday and who we didn't let talk, he insisted on saying, yes, it's because we don't give visas for the Sahel. I've said so. He just needs to prove we don't give it. So when we don't give visas, it must be a lie, because I asked him Solsim. But we have a narrative, we have a description of the facts and the actors, but when you use other identifications, you know them. So if you think that security is being compromised, and at the AES level, tell your representatives, your auxiliaries in the armies who are coming to attack there, to stop. Stop giving out weapons. It will stop. How do you say it? I even asked them why you continue to appoint special representatives in the Sahel. That's what I don't understand. You appoint yourselves as special representatives in the SEL, Hiku. You say that the Sahel contains nothing. Africa contains nothing. At the same time, you say that the tree has no fruit. You cling to the branches, to come down, but you don't come down. There is still a problem. What are you doing in Africa? That means that there are many other objectives. But also, and the last example that I will give, we must even look at the history and origin of Human Rights Watch, because the structure that was created in 1978, a structure called the Defense of Human Rights, was to counter the advance of the Union, the the USSR, into different zones by saying that communism was gaining ground. It was to the benefit of the United States. And in 1981, they came and set up America Watch. And America Watch was expanded to practically every continent. And it wasn't until 1991 that this entire conglomerate was brought together, and Human Rights Watch was formed. Continuing with the same argument that Russia and China have a strong impact in the Sahel, they haven't changed. So these are structures that are used to make a certain type of argument in order to carry out assassinations. So here, we can give the impression that they produced this report so that Burkina Faso would no longer have funding, so that we would have diplomatic problems, so that we would not have political influence, so that we would not be sold weapons in terms of security. But the real pillar of all of this is the organized assassination of the heads of state they are targeting. Billing. Because in this, when they say that satellites see people, how many ships or cargoes have we been able to notify, with the help of neighboring countries or even partners, to say that such and such cargo is transporting military uniforms from Burkina Faso without the authorities being aware? Where did these uniforms go? Where did the shoes and other things go? We bring shoes to go and transmit them to the militants in the shadows who are carrying out attacks and giving the impression that it is the people. Duh. The Burkinabe FDS, nah, and that is what your satellites film to say that they have proof. I think that this is not at all serious, and in view of what I have mentioned about Libya, whether it is the African Union, IOS, or even the UN, if we want to be serious, Human Rights Watch should have been pilloried in the same way as Sarkozy in 2025, who was recognized by the courts as having been pilloried for talking about the regrouping of, how would I say, malfra. Well, beyond these considerations, Mr. Minister of State, what is the reality of the fight against terrorism in Burkina Faso, the reconquest of the territory? I had the opportunity to share a panel last time in front of the head of state, Comrade Ibrahim Traoré, to share the panel with a journalist who claimed that 60% of Burkina Faso's territory was under the control of terrorists. What is the exact reality? Yes, anyway, to start with this reality, if the newspaper Le Monde, let me remind you, of December 6, 2021, managed to confirm that, how can I put it, what was used to attack Libya was fake. They even said that it was the Libyan paradoxes. That's how they titled the Libyan paradoxes. But that already indicates that when it comes from such a milieu, everything that is produced and disseminated is to divert the mind. Because someone who has no values, who has no morals, lying is not a problem for them. It is a weapon. Disinformation is not a problem for them. It is a weapon, and so on. What must be said about the defense of the country, and at the time when France was told to leave the country, there were several regions of our country that were not accessible. The WBA region was not accessible. The Bobo region from Houndé was inaccessible. The eastern region going to Fatajen was inaccessible. I'm not saying that everything is perfect. If it were perfect and everything was correct, the fight would not have stopped. It means that the fight continues. To be more precise, when you take, for example, the organization of our army itself, France said that even for recruiting, we must refer to them from 2022 to the present time. And since this is military data, we are not going to give everything because they too listen. They take notes, and since we are ready at all times to counter any possible threats, I can tell you that we have more than 20 rapid intervention battalions. This is a first. Ask all countries, even those who claim to be powerful, who has the capacity to train so many battalions in a short period of time and equip them. That's the first element. The second example I'll give you is that at the police level, we have mobile intervention unit groups called GOMES. There are about 10 of them. This has never existed in our country at military airports and air bases since 1960. In 2022, we only had one base. Today, we have about 4 bases, and it could be more high, but as I said, I can't give exact figures on the set because we know who we're talking to. We're talking to the whole world. At the VDP level, there are thousands and thousands of people, and that's because the government has limited them. Just this morning, I I received messages and calls from young people saying that they want to get involved as defenders of the country. And all those people, they are people who need to be trained. They are people who need to be outfitted. They are people who need to be armed. Thus, I again thank brother country Togo, which has allowed the weaponry to continue to arrive. But at the same time, I would like to make an opening by saying that all those who are described as dietists today on the ground are auxiliaries of foreign armies. We, the leaders appointed at the civilian, military, and other levels by the various heads of state, must behave seriously. We must behave virtuously. We must behave patriotically. What does that mean? When we are in a period of combat, even if it is a civilian who says he is ready to lose his life for his country, we must not talk about bodies anymore. We must talk about combat units. And in a combat unit, when the terrorists come, they do not come with different weapons. At home, they have the same weapons. We should also realize that when someone has to go and counter them, the whole Sihit, they need to have the same firepower. We know that the political struggle is not just on the civilian front, it is in all walks of life. It is about calling on everyone to understand that they are not the wrong key that will be used to seize your country and get their hands on it. In principle, the fight continues. Areas continue to be reclaimed. There is also malicious communication to discourage and disorient people, as Human Rights Watch has just done by incriminating and naming more than a dozen commanders at the Burkina Faso FDS command. What is all this for? It is to intimidate and scare people. However, on the other hand, it does not name any terrorists who claim to have intervened. So you see how it works. So this is to say that the fight continues, and I tell you that I myself, who am standing before you, am committed as a VDP. I am trained. So from this point of view, I said that it is because there is a country, that there is a ministerial appointment. It is because there is a country that has an institutional appointment. We cannot say that we are in a revolution and then behave and say, well, bias, as it is the situation there, bias, I am a minister. The existence of a country allows you to be a minister. In this regard, the primary function is protecting the country. Yes, I'm a VDP, and I'll say so clearly. To correct the misnomer, these are not compliant ministers. That's simply not true. And even France copied us when their chief of staff came out and said yes, that the French must accept that their children die to defend France. The next day, how should I put it? Emmanuel Macron, made a speech in which he called for the recruitment of volunteers. There you have it. So that means even that word, he has to come and pay us for it, right? And who said that these are ministers today, and he's copying us? Yeah, thank you, Minister of State. We're coming to the end of this interview, so I'll wrap it up in a minute. If you could define the success of the AES in the next 5 years, what would be the main indicator in your opinion? The main indicator of the success of the AOS in 5 years is a well-educated population, a unified population, a fundamentally united population, a population that understands its history, where it comes from, where it is, and where it's going, and a population that understands that lying on someone's head, for others, is lying on the ground. So it's all in all of this that we're going to see the fullness of our sovereignty on all pillars. Because it is the political pillar, running the country, you need human beings. If you do not have an educated, well-trained population, you will always be in the background. We're going to spy on them and then do something else. If you do not have a well-educated population, men, you cannot talk about economic sovereignty because you are talking about managing currencies. You need men. Exploiting resources, you need men. A population that is not well-educated, you cannot talk about reclaiming your identity. Identity will not be applied to trees. They would still be men. So they must become aware of this and not even be ashamed of who they are. And of course, and the last point, you cannot defend a country if it is not through men. If you do not have quality men, betrayal will always come knocking at the door. If you do not have quality men, the slightest bullet fired, people will flee and even leave their equipment. If you don't have a well-educated population, people will sell information about the country and even turn against it. So in 5 years, what we want is a well-educated, well-trained, and very healthy population. And it is with this in mind that the head of state has made decisions on the 1,000 × 5 plan. That means each year, we need to recruit 1,000 specialist doctors in our country. So in the 5 years that you are aiming for, in addition to those who are in the country and the people I congratulate, we will have at least 5,000 doctors specializing in all fields. Thank you.
That for now we don't know who we actually are, because what our forefathers used to do before these people came in contact with us, we have lost everything. So for that matter, they need to bring these things into us, teach us, and let us go back to who we are. Live as the way we used to be before they came, and not what they have given to us. And for that matter, we need to be educated, and that they declare it progressive because they can't say they are in a revolution, because there are a lot of things. Our culture, our language, our everything has been taken away, and we need to all get all these things back before we can then say we have a revolution like China has done. And until we do that, we are now in a progressive. And that when it comes to the economic side, we need to be patient, because you know the way they've created a system to make the young ones yearn for quick things. So for that matter, we don't have the patience. China today, we are all excited. When we look at Russia, they all went through pain. So we need to understand as Africans that what we are even asking and hoping and fighting for, this generation or 2, 3, 4 generations might not enjoy. But it will take a long time before we can finally say we have a total revolution whereby our young ones who come after us can enjoy. So we need to have that spirit of endurance. Those of us who always want quick things, we need to understand that things will take a gradual process. It will take us time. It will take us time. We might not even enjoy it. So we should be ready to sacrifice ourselves to make sure that the generations that will come will get a better Africa. So for that matter, what we are planting today will take time. We might not even enjoy it, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight for it. And the mentality of I need to make it now, that spirit in us must die off, because you need to understand that nothing good comes easy. And let us not allow people to talk about how they claim they are coming to change the narrative, and for how long. Rome wasn't built in just a day. Even these people, it took them years and centuries. That was why they came into Africa. Like the way they always try to take the power of the African by claiming that there's nothing here yet. When we sack these people out of our continent, they don't want to go. If Africa is poor and there's nothing here, why are they always here? That should tell us that there's something special here. But because they don't want you and I to know what we have, they have to lie to us to lose everything that we have so they can have access to it. So we need to understand that as Africans, we need to be patient to fight for the total liberation of the African. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, West Africa, and in Burkina Faso.